This video is about the letter Yough. I used to call it Yough, but I noticed that it survived for long enough to lose the final consonant in some dialects, apparently. So it's easier to pronounce it Yough, so I'm going to pronounce it Yough going forward. Also, it survived for long enough to take on this modern-like spelling, so I'm also just going to use this modern-like spelling instead of a needlessly archaic spelling which other people are using. Okay, so one thing I want to point out is apparently the earliest attested spelling wasn't anything like yo or yoch. It was I-Y-E. I think what's going on here is this might be what the letter was originally called, because this letter was originally just the insular G as used by the English people. So it may have originally just retained the old name of the insular G. So if you have the Latin letter G, which in Latin may have been pronounced something like ge, I'm assuming, and if this gets taken into English, then the English are probably going to palatalize the g in the beginning and end up pronouncing it like ye. I don't know what the I is doing there, but I noticed it's also over here in thorn. So if it kind of popped up into thorn as a kind of corruption apparently, then maybe it's also just a corruption in the name ye. So maybe we can just kind of ignore it. I don't know. And I do want to point out that this probably is the name Thorn. It doesn't look like that at first, but let's consider some things, okay? So let's consider that the final letter might just be a sloppy N. The letter before it is probably R rotunda. And then there's the letter O. And we know that at some point in time, some people started mixing up the letter Y and the letter Thorn. I don't know why anyone would be doing that so early in time, but that's still the explanation I'm going to roll with. So I think the spelling here is I, Thorn, O, R, N. And then you see the letter Thorn down here. This is probably the word and. So I think it's A-N-T, and I think it's just another sloppy N. And we know from other manuscripts that A-N-T is an attested spelling of and. And over here we see the letter W above the letter win. So yeah, it all makes sense to me that this is an attempt to show the name of the letter Yough, and maybe at this point in time it hadn't been given the name Yough. Here's some trivia up here. Apparently some people were using it as an ampersand. That's kind of interesting. And I think a lot of viewers have probably already heard that the name Mackenzie used to be McKinney, but because people started using the letter Z to stand in for the letter Yough, because they looked very similar, especially in some fonts or some handwriting styles, yeah, that led to confusion, and it led to the name being pronounced differently by some people. Another thing I want to point out is that it's not like the moment the Normans came over and brought the Carolingian G that immediately insular G took on a new shape and a new name. So I already talked about the name part, but look at the shape part. Look at the date of this manuscript and look at what Yough looks like down here. This looks less like the classic Yough shape than some versions of insular G from Old English. So yeah, I don't think it was an immediate thing. It was a development that may have taken a century or two.